This is madness!
Madness. This is Sparta!
So 1944, Jim enters the war. He spent time on one of these ships that haul men across from California to the, what is it?
The South Pacific.
South Pacific.
Yeah.
And you can't even turn over in your bunk. They're stacking bodies in here. It's a 30-day trip. You can't take a shower. But then the nuclear bomb came, August 6, Hiroshima, August 9, Nagasaki, and the Japanese Empire started to disbelieve their cause. They started to realize they were not going to finish what they started. And Germany had been subdued. The land war in Japan is now a fading reality, and they don't know it. The guys aboard these ships don't know their orders until they get them, right? So what Jim is saying is they thought they were going to have to invade Japan. And so then the second bomb is dropped. And then there's this moment in history. It's called the Japanese Instrument of Surrender. And some of the high schools around here have a copy of this document.
We moved up to Tokyo Harbor, and the ships went in the Tokyo Harbor. The battleship I was on, it turned out that in the meantime, I had gotten transferred from the battleship New Mexico to the battleship Missouri. And because President Truman wanted to have his state of Missouri was obviously his home state, and he wanted the signing to occur on the Missouri. And so as we moved up there, and
who were the dignitaries aboard the ship?
The dignitaries aboard on the Missouri were Admiral Nimitz, Halsey. There was a Chinese, and British General. I can't tell you his name, and I remember most definitely General Wainwright was standing there, and he was, of course, he had been interned in Japan during the war, and he was really had deteriorated.
The President of the United States was the Vice President there?
No, and General Wainwright, he had been captured by the Japanese in Burma, and
was he treated appropriately?
He was treated apparently just okay. And
General Wainwright.
Yes, he was an admiral, a general on that had been captured in Burma in that collapse of the situation in Burma. And of course, being General Admiral, was Nimitz was the so-called, at that time, was the commander in the South Pacific, and of course Doolittle was down there. I could remember I could see from where my vantage point was when the Japanese came aboard the Missouri that Doolittle was sitting at a table awaiting them to be piped aboard, the Japanese. And the Japanese came in motor whaleboats, delivering them from shore, and they landed on a platform between the New Mexico and the Missouri, and because my position was such that I could, as they came up the ladder from the motor whaleboats, the Japanese were in dress whites, all the medals and honors that they owned, they had on, and the American contingency were in khakis.
Okay.
And
was there a sense of shame or a sense of pride? What was the spirit of the Japanese?
The spirit was the fact that they wanted the Japanese to know that this was just an ordinary bunch of people that knew how to win a war.
They didn't want to put on some kind of show.
They wanted to embarrass the Japanese.
So khakis was just like your grubs. It wasn't.
Just khaki. They just they didn't even have jackets on. They just had of course, they were all admirals. They had their stars on their collars, and that was. And the other thing was, there was a gentleman from Australia. He was there, apparently a prime minister. He had his fancy uniform on.
Okay, the Aussie.
He had that big hat on, and
Where were you standing, and were you with anybody?
I was in a place where I had an absolutely perfect place to watch it. And as they got piped aboard.
So they didn't walk up these ramps?
No, they
had to climb a ladder?
They had to climb a ladder.
That's good stuff. Now, was this intentional, or was this just the mechanical limitations?
Well, it was because it was a mechanical limitation that there was.
It worked out good because we're not trying to put on a show. These are just regular Americans.
Yeah.
You can climb on our ship. You can climb the same ladder we climb.
Yes.
And you can sign the instrument of surrender. This isn't a showcase or wow.
And there was apparently a definite order of Americans that were aboard the Missouri, because Halsey was only a 3-star admiral, and he was outranked, of course, by 5-star admirals and generals. And they climbed aboard. They came aboard. They sat down at the table, and I could see MacArthur's back. And they lined up and signed the documents. And after the documents were signed,
you could see MacArthur's back?
You could see his back.
Was Patton in the same row?
Pardon?
About General Patton?
He wasn't there.
He wasn't? Okay.
No. Patton wasn't there. I don't know who else for the Army was there. I'm sure there's an official photograph.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here just in case the